Well, Tony Popovic has named his 25-man Socceroo squad to take on the US and Canada over in North America in the October FIFA International Window. A very crucial one for Australia, getting prepped in World Cup conditions less than a year out from the FIFA World Cup. It's a squad that just kind of popped out of the blue. There was no public pre-announcement that this was coming. There was no press conference, which I'm sure will be a relief for Popper today, because I'm sure there would have been plenty of questions about it. Poletti, hello to you. The headline is the inclusion of Alex Robertson. He's a player that has been the subject of many, many conversations when it comes to Socceroos selection. It's his first camp that he's been selected for in 2 years, and definitely his first under Tony Popovic. But probably most intriguing, it comes off the back of not having played competitive football in a long, long time. He suffered a leg injury in the final match of pre-season. He is now back to being fully fit, and he is joining full team training over at Cardiff in League One, but has not yet got to the point where he's fit enough to play first team football for Cardiff yet. He's been selected in the Socceroos in probably one of the more unlikely windows.
It's an interesting choice, I think, is probably the best way to describe it. Look, this is like, I think we all want to see Alex Robertson get a proper crack at being a Socceroos player, but like this selection also kind of goes against the ethos of what Popovic has, spurred, which is that if you're not playing, you're not going to get selected. And Alex Robertson hasn't played since the end of last season. Now, we were chatting pre-record, and you said you had a little bit of a theory here, and I've got a little bit of a different theory myself. And I very much think that his selection, I can't see him playing. Maybe he's in the 23 on match day, but I can't see him actually playing. I think this is very much like what Segicic was, who's been admitted from this squad in the last window, where come into camp, get some experience. I want to have a look at you up close, see what you're made of, and, but you're not going to play in this window, right? Because otherwise, this selection goes against everything that Popovic has said for the last 12 months, and that would be weird, wouldn't it?
It would be weird. Now, I have my theory as well, and I don't think this is about selling the shirt. If that was an issue, I don't think Alex Robertson would have been named. But you look at some of the other inclusions, and I think you can make an inference into what Tony Popovic was doing. So Cam Devlin is a midfielder. He's the exception to the rule that I'm about to present to you. He's been playing every week. He's a very solid and important member for Hearts, who are flying in the Scottish Premiership at the moment. The other names there that obviously raise eyebrows, Nick D'Agostino, playing over in Norway for Viking. He's made 5 appearances so far this season, just the 1 start. That's hardly knocking on the door of the Socceroos. But it's their first call, those two, their first call up under Popovic. And then you've got 3 other players who have played under Popper before, but are not in the last window, and some not for a little while. So Daniel Arzani, who's playing over in Hungary, he's only made 2 appearances in competitive football this season, no starts. Jason Guerrier has made 2 starts in recent kind of weeks, but has not been a regular player ever since the last World Cup qualifiers for Australia. So since those Japan and Saudi Arabia games, Jason Guerrier has only made 2 starts. And then Mitch Duke, who has never been a regular player for Makita Zelvia since they got promoted to J1, but has seen a slight uptick in form. But none of these players that have just kind of been brought into this squad are regular starters, right? So what my theory is this is going to be the last window before the World Cup, where Tony Popovic is essentially telling us what his long list is. So you take a lot of the young talent from the last window that was brought in so he could have a look at and see where they were at. So the likes of Adrian Segicic, Noah Botic, Nicholas Milanovic, Sammy Silvera, those kind of players that aren't in this squad, they were getting a taste of it and seeing what it's like. And now Popovic is kind of extending that net to the players that he thinks might be in a position to be selected by the time July rolls around next year. Obviously, they don't quite have the form line right now, but he wants to get them into camp and have a look at them and see where they are. So he now has this pool of maybe 35, 40 players that he's seen in the last couple of windows. And from there, we kind of know the selection of where our World Cup squad is going to come from.
Well, that's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off. I mean, I agree with what you said, I think that is as good a theory as any. I just I don't know, because I think, okay, at some point you have to start locking in your long list as to, right, these are the names I'm going to be looking at. But I think we're in October. The A-League season hasn't even kicked off yet, and I'm going to talk more about that a little bit later. Don't worry. I think if you're starting to lock your long list in now, what does that tell A-League players ahead of the new season? Does that say you have to be the standout of the standout, or you're not going? Like, is there no room for a bolter in this season unless they're like, Johnny Warren contenders? Is there no room for, say, a Caceres or a Bratton or something like that who are perfectly serviceable, but because they're not playing at the moment, AFC Cup aside, and again, I'll get into that. If this is like, most coaches usually come up with like a 50-player shortlist, right? So if we're finding out, your theory, right, that he's got 35 to 40 locked in outside of your usual, A-League players who just aren't selected because they're not playing at the moment. Like what are we looking at here? Are we looking at, are these the 40 players and there's no room for anyone else? And if that's the case, I'd be feeling very hard done by if I was an A-League player right now.
No, it's a good argument. So I reckon maybe we'll treat this as the second phase of 3, right? So we had the young bolters in the previous window who'd started the season hot. Here are the maybe fringe players who aren't getting the minutes at the moment in Europe, but could be by the time the World Cup comes around. And then maybe in the final window of this year, we'll get a lot of those A-League players that are kind of, the leading players in the A-League that'll be in frame. And from there, maybe we'll have a list of 40. And then by the time 2026 rolls around, we'll be nailing down that number. And he will have had data on all those people. And then you can tick them off the list one by one. So having seen them in firsthand, and yeah, you're right. There has to be a window for those A-League players as well, because there are absolutely players, the likes of Craig Goodwin. I'm sure Aziz Page will still be competing for selection, and a bolter or two as well. You think of the likes of Nisham Felipe, who's been picked in Popovic squads before. I think there still has to be, as you say, there's going to be opportunities for those players as well.
But then that also makes the timing of this window insanely weird, right? Because if you're lining up games against the host nation of the World Cup, or the host nations in this case, 2 of the 3, surely you want as close to what you might think your final squad is to get them that on the ground experience, right? And I understand, like Yazbek and Kai Rouse aside, who play in MLS week in, week out, know what to expect both in Canada and the USA, but a lot of the A-League players will never have experienced that before. Like, if you're doing that, like playing at altitude is something you can't just, you have to have that experience in order to, do well in it, right? Like, they're playing in Colorado for a reason. So, I don't know, just not having the A-League player like this, like, I don't know, it just seems weird, right?
I just think, like, particularly with the locations of the games and the teams we're coming up against, a lot of it just comes down to timing. So obviously with the US and Canada, they're not playing in qualifiers. So these games could be scheduled out as soon as Australia locked in their qualification. You had the likes of South America and Europe, obviously still at the moment, are still during their qualification. So South America has just finished. We've seen rumours about potentially playing Argentina in India in the next international window. Let's see what happens there. But I imagine it will be South American opponents in that window. And then the one window in 2026 that we get before the squad has to be selected, my guess would be that we're playing against European opposition. So I think that's just like the best they could do. If you want to get around to all those different kind of styles of football, then you got to play the North American teams now. I think that's just what they were kind of shoehorned into.
Yeah, okay, makes sense.
Yeah. So some of the other names, I guess Matt Ryan comes in for Tom Glover, which is not really a surprise. Matt Ryan settled in at Levante and playing now in La Liga. And then the big outs, I think that I didn't mention earlier, are Ryan Teague and Adrian Segicic. Now, we got a little head off with Adrian. He spoke to a reporter after his game on the weekend and said he wasn't going to be involved. And I don't think that's a massive surprise to anyone. He's been kind of moved back to a bench player for Portsmouth in the last few weeks. I'm sure he made a good impression when he came to camp, but this is a long game. And personally, I'm not in the camp of anyone who's sweating on his international allegiance. I'm also kind of going I'm drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit, and I'm saying, well, if he's going to flip after not being selected in one squad, then we don't really want him anyway. You want someone who does want to play for the shirt. So Sega misses out. Ryan Teague misses out as well. Obviously, he hasn't been getting a lot of game time over for KV Mechelen in Belgium at the moment. So not maybe a massive surprise, but he has been a regular starter. So a couple of different options in there, and they'll have to wait and try and improve their form for December.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, I don't think Sekicic's omission is anything entirely to be unexpected. Ryan Teague is a little bit okay. That was a little bit of a surprise, but Popper's obviously got a plan, and I guess we have to back the plan, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I misspoke, by the way. The next window is November. I'm assuming we've got to learn pretty soon who will be playing in that window. If it is Argentina, they've got to lock that in. But there you go. That's the squads. Obviously, what else have we missed? I guess Mitch Duke, we haven't really talked about much. He's kind of been that much maligned player. It'll be interesting to see how he matches up with Moture and who gets minutes in that position. But apart from that, the kind of core group is still pretty, solid relative to the last window. So a lot of these names that we talked about, I don't actually see them getting too many minutes. As I said, I think it's just more about getting them in camp so Papa can get a look at them and kind of assess where they're at in terms of putting them on a World Cup long list. But it's exciting window. Obviously, this is kind of our real beginning of proper World Cup prep. These are two opposition that are going to be there, just like New Zealand, but over in those conditions as well. It's no more PR opportunities and trying to explain the soccer ashes to people. It's time to get ready for the World Cup.
It absolutely is, and I did say earlier I was going to get onto this, and this seems like as good a time as any. The APL need to find a way to get this season started earlier. This is starting to get ridiculous. As we've already talked about, sort of okay, well, there's no opportunity for A-League players in this window. They can't get a chance in conditions over in the USA. Not to make this too much about the Champions League, but we've just seen Melbourne City start their Champions League elite campaign 0 from 2. MacArthur FC are 1 from 1, who, to be fair, look like they might be the best team in their group, but they've played 3 games of competitive football since May prior to starting their campaign, and we saw that against Taipo, how poorly that worked out. Melbourne City had, before they started their campaign, had not had a competitive hit out since the grand final. The Australia Cup does not count. That was the VPL one side. If you've got players here missing out on a very key opportunity ahead of the World Cup because the A-League isn't playing. The world's longest off season. It's fun. It's a little bit of banter, but this is a World Cup year. You're robbing players of opportunities to actually get game time, to stake their case for a World Cup here. This can't continue, long term. Something has to be done about it.
Yeah, I'm with you. Aussies need to play more games. I'd say a longer league, get a cup competition over the summer as well, just get more games of football into them. But there's plenty of issues that we need to sort out alongside that as well. Poletti, thanks for joining me. That'll do for our initial squad reaction. Let us know what you think, who missed out, who shouldn't be there. I'm sure there's a lot of names that people will say they shouldn't be there today, but a curious squad from Tony Popovic. Enjoy the football next week.